and then let's jump
And I'll
in.
start singing.
You'll start singing. 3, 2, 1, go. Hello there, people and listeners of the Hungry Podcast. Today, I hope you are ravenous for a second course. Today, I welcome back the utter legend, wild creative, and effervescent storyteller, Perry Haydn Taylor. Perry is the founder of Big Fish, who are a marketing and brand agency. They've single-handedly created a whole bevy of juggernaut brands: Charlie Bigham, Goo, Coconut Collaborative, Whole Earth, Sofa.com. Yeah, I'm super excited for a bit of kind of Perry and Pope part deux. So thank you so much for coming on today, Perry.
Delighted, as always. Yeah, it was such fun last time. I can't believe you invited me back, though. But we shall see what gems and pearls of wisdom you managed to surface, if any, from me.
Well, that's what I wanted to say, because I think last time we kind of grooved and surfed and sort of chortled our way through all the sort of brandy waters, right? And I thought it was really interesting, and there were so many lessons you taught me that kind of really have imprinted on me. I think the first one you said, and I remember this so vividly, was like, packaging genuinely changes the taste of the product. And you gave this great story about, I'm probably butchering this, but imagine eating a spaghetti vongole in kind of like a grim-ridden dormitory in Manchester where I went to uni. And that's pretty naff packaging per se. And then teleporting that same spaghetti vongole to, I don't know, Ibiza under like the hot sunshine with, the sun tickling your neck, and you've got the sand rolling through your feet. That same vongole tastes completely different when you buy those in that setting. Yeah. And that's what great packaging is. And I thought, oh my God, it just changed everything. Like, even now when I have a gin and tonic, if it's in the wrong glass, I get pissed off. Like,
well, I'm quite right. I hope it's a Sit Smith. It's fascinating, yeah.
Yeah, so you taught me that. And then the other one, which I love, and so many listeners have kind of talked about this, is your motto, which is dream big, dive deep, and swim fast. And I just love how succinct and powerful that is, and it's something I've been implementing massively. And I suppose, kind of in the infamous words of Big Fish, I'd kind of love to use that as the diving board to kind of jump into this conversation. And I'd love to dive deep, kind of into your childhood.
Oh, Christ! I didn't even have to pay for the therapy. That's genius. 375 quid an hour, I think, isn't
it? Well, I pay my guy 80, so we'll probably find a middle ground there. But I'd love to know kind of what your childhood was like, and how your parents galvanized your passion for design and brands, like in those early days.
Wow, there's a lot there. So what would you like me to... Should I start at the childhood and get to the placebo?
Start with the childhood.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, sweet of you to be interested in my childhood, but I suppose starting with the end in mind of what might be valuable to your listeners, in terms of, it's very kind of you to say all those nice things about us and what we've achieved at Big Fish, but I do think that I've got 3 children. 3 girls. The eldest one's 18, the middle one's 17, and the youngest one's 14, and they're all named after typefaces. I think I told you that last time. Poor things. But I think the reason I mention that is because having children, suddenly you remember things from your childhood, because you think, bloody hell, oh my God, I was 9 years old, or I was 14 years old. And the other day, my youngest daughter said to me, when I basically gave her my treasured possession, which was my G&S Tracker Trucks Crips Wheels skateboard from when I was 9, that my dad had actually really very sweetly bought me. And I'll tell you the story about that. And I gave it to Clarendon, my youngest, and she said, "Oh, are you sure, Daddy? It's like your special skateboard. This has gone through, all your life." And I said, "No, darling, it's time for you to take on the skateboard," because you were loving surfing. And she went, "Was this made before the war?" I was like, "You little shit." Anyway, so it's quite funny because as a child, I think your formative years are really important. In fact, actually, I was talking to someone who's a sort of Oxford University linguistics person the other day, and I'm fascinated by psychology because of what you were saying earlier about the placebo effect. I think our brains are amazingly interesting, and what we do and what you do as well is what everyone does in brand design and marketing, is that we actually manipulate people's brains. And and if it's very powerful, and you can either do that in a good way or you can do that in a bad way, and you can be a force for good and try and not sell them things that will kill them and the planet, and you can do it in a way that because it's devious. And I suppose if I go back to my childhood and what my dad did and my parents did, is that my dad was a doctor, my mum grew up in the occupation in the war, and they grew up with very different, great values actually, and they nurtured a sort of thirst for knowledge in my brother and I. We were fascinated. My father was an academic. In fact, he would read about 10 books a week. I mean, he was an insomniac doctor.
That's mental.
Yeah, he was in the SAS. He was incredible. He was in the SAS for a year. Before that, he was in the RAF, sort of short-term commissions. I think it had to be in those days. And so I really, looked up to my parents, and I really loved them very much. And I lived an idyllic childhood in Jersey in the Channel Islands. I wanted to be a surfer. I was bloody lucky. I feel incredibly privileged. But my father and my mother always, they came from quite humble backgrounds and did well. My father went to Oxford, bright, studied. So I kind of wanted to emulate him, and fundamentally fucked up and failed really badly. But so I think most children hopefully do sort of aspire to either, not let their parents down, but actually I think, the idea of a parent nurturing talent is key. And that's what my father did and my mother did, was that if I was really into something, they would actually support me, not by sort of going out and buying me that skateboard that I gave to Clarendon, but my dad would go, "You're really into skateboarding." So he'd help me make a really shitty one out of some old roller skates. And then he'd sort of say, if you can do a handstand from the back door to the front door, because we lived by this little country road on this farm we lived. And he said, if you can do a handstand, what's the trick? And everyone knows is handstand. If you can do a handstand from the back gate to the front gate, I'll get you a really, really good skateboard. Like 2 months or whatever, it's 3, every day in the morning, bloody running out, trying to get, eventually, I said, come and see me, no. And they were really good because they would really make you earn, test your passion. Is this just a whim? And then the act of actually trying to get there was really interesting. And I think that for me, maybe, I think they did a really good job on that, because I do the same sort of thing with my children, which is that they have genuine passion for stuff and they get stuck into stuff, and that relentless pursuit of something is a behavior that was sort of ingrained in my brother and I when we were younger. Maybe it was a curse, but it's something that I feel that I've kept with me all those years. And it led me to become fascinated in art, in design, and in psychology. And I know what it feels like to really got into something, to be passionate about it and actually to follow it through, rather than, I think what I see a lot of is, people who get into things because they don't love them and it becomes work. And I know it sounds like a cliche, and it is a cliche, but it's there for a reason, because so many people sort of separate the things that they love and the things that they do to make money. And they say it's a symptom of, well, not everyone's as privileged as you, Perry. But I actually don't agree with that. I think, most people can find really in an immense amount of pleasure if they have a thirst for knowledge and they're interested in what they're doing, or if they find interest in what they're doing. And so I think my parents, sorry, bloody hell, went on a little bit. My parents nurtured that in the fact that they didn't give us stuff. They just made us sort of, I remember when I wanted to get into photography, my dad said, you have to do a test. So, it was like 100 questions on photography. But by the end of it, I really knew about photography, And actually, I loved photography as a result, because I learned into it rather than just try it. And I think YouTube and Instagram and all these sort of things today, and TikTok, my kids and I are always on these things. and everyone's got a thirst for knowledge, but actually very few of them do actually do stuff. They look at other people doing it, but then you see these people on Instagram and on TikTok who do, and they can do amazing things. They've been doing they've done it for about 1,000 times a week. They're just doing this stuff. So for me, the creative side and the design side has been a sort of, perhaps there's a bit of OCD in there. It's kind of a relentless pursuit of something, and then you kind of find the thing that you really love. And for me, I became fascinated by how things could be better. Yeah, sorry, that was a terrible answer.
No, it was a brilliant answer. I mean, I kind of need to work through this. There's so much in that. I think the first thing, and what I've gathered from that, and I've got this kind of unshakable belief in how the education system is built to kind of bully and ravage the curiosity out of us and the creativeness, because you basically you do these exams, it's either pass or fail. As you said, that thirst for knowledge, that pursuit for better, the obsession with the skateboard, the obsession with photography. The school system isn't built for that, I don't think, on the grand scheme of things. And I think that's one of the biggest issues, is people lose that curiosity and that creativity and that ability to tinker. And what your parents have done with the skateboard is they're building this thirst for knowledge. And I knew there would be kind of some sort of interesting gems in that, and there certainly are. But one of the things you've said is, they had great values. What were some of those values?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my dad, as I said, my dad was a doctor, so he died poor. But he died happy, and I think his values were, his riches lay in the lack of his requirements, was his line that he would use. It's a bloody good line, and it was, he was a bon vivant. He grew up he grew up during the war. As did my mum. My mum grew up, right in the thick of things, under occupation in the Channel Islands in Jersey. For her father was killed in the war, so she was, I think she was probably 10 or 12 when my grandfather died, and so they grew up in great, I think, sort of middle class hardship on my dad's side of things, because he was in England, and was lucky and got an education and ended up becoming sort of, scholarly and academic, whereas my mother was, in a terrible place, and therefore they really, they always remembered how bad it was, and actually they really valued life. I mean, they really enjoyed life, they were bloody happy, which is great. I mean, the fact that they didn't, we're getting into some really deep therapy now. Their values were based on what they believed, which was that, you should be, out to help others. Certainly in my father's case, as a doctor. My mother was a sort of classic matriarch. They were quite, money was a tricky topic for them. So it was all about, saving and making do and that kind of stuff. But then, they would also, when they were in their later life, they would not hold back on enjoying themselves. So I could I define their values as if they were a brand? No, I couldn't. But I mean, I think they were done by, they were, that's what that sort of doctory side of the family was. And of course, they both worked together in those days, doctors and their wives and partners. My mum, they were a team. So that was we grew up in that environment where there was always someone coming to the house with a problem, and my father was always trying to diagnose it, or in the surgery and help them. So that's, I suppose, I did the sort of thickies version of that, which was to do it for brands rather than for real living human beings. But that, I think there is a parallel certainly in my life where I saw my father be curious about why things had happened and what would cause these problems, and the sort of diagnostic process that he went through with a patient. I remember once a chap came in with his hands like this, sort of wrist dropped, and an old boy, and because Jersey's a small island, everyone knew everyone. And my father said, a lot of what he used to do was when a patient was in front of him, he said, you diagnose the patient, you can up to a point from looking and examining them, but actually having examined them in, physically, the real diagnosis is knowing the context, is knowing the environment in which they were. And this guy had wrist drop, and he couldn't work it out why this chap had this. And eventually he decided to go and see him in a couple of parishes down, and he was a barman. And it turned out that in the morning, when my dad walked in early in the morning, there he was pouring himself a pint. But what he was actually doing was, he wasn't pouring himself a pint, he was clearing the pumps, which you had to in those days. And the reason you had to clear the pumps was they had lead pipes, and lead would get absorbed into the beer overnight. So you would throw that away so no one got lead in their beer, and then that's why you wasted beer in the morning. You'd clear the pumps, chuck the beer away, but he didn't. He drank the beer, and he cumulatively got lead poisoning, and wrist drop is a symptom of lead poisoning. But Dad had to go and sort of do this detective work. He's just like, there's no reason why he should have these dropped wrists. And I remember that. I think that's sort of similar to evaluating a business. I think I probably maybe have always thought about things like that. Lots, I have hundreds of stories like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's precisely what we do. Is someone comes to see us with a challenge to overcome, or a problem, or something that's stopping them growing, and because we're a strategic consultancy first and foremost, that executes this stuff, that then turns that into some sort of consumer experience. The first thing you have to do is understand, A, what is this business, and B, you have to understand, well, what's getting in the way of growing? Is it something to do with their people, their product, the market they're in? Is it to do with their marketing and their promotions, or is it to do with the culture, or all those sorts of things? And I think that's in the sort of world of food and drink. Yes, you might have got the most amazing vineyard down in the south of France, but if your winemaker isn't obsessed, and if the agronomist isn't really kind of giving you great advice about the soil, and if that whole thing isn't working as one, it might be that you've got this fantastic reputation, but as someone leaves the business, or the couple of the key individuals, just there's something not right, suddenly what was great suddenly becomes less great and loses its luster, or and so I think, in the same diagnostic thing, you can look at brands and you can look at businesses, go through a diagnostic phase, and then sort of go, actually, do you know what? That if you just change that one thing, if you just were, if you were to just raise your game in this area, or maybe change your price, or have you thought about this? That's the cure. That's like giving him the tablet for the, once it's lead poisoning, the risks come back. You give him the tablets, off it goes. So I suppose in a rather sort of inflated way, I should compare myself to my dad in that way. I think, Christ, it is a similar process, isn't it? You've got a patient comes in, who's the brand or the business. You're trying to help them improve, grow, whatever, or stay healthy. And then what you're really looking for, back to the children's thing in my world, is for 25 years running a business, as we were, which was all about making money and getting people to be seriously successful. And it was my eldest daughter, weirdly, who said to me, actually she sent me the William McDonough essay on his 1997 essay about all waste should equal food. And I don't know if you read it. It's an amazing, I'll send it to you. It's an amazing essay. It is literally the essay everyone should read. And that fundamentally changed our view of our business. Again, it's as a parent-child, it took a 14-year-old child back then to say to me, what are you doing with your life? Why are you, everything was kicking off, Greta Thunberg, all that kind of stuff. And it really made us, Vic and I, rethink about, bloody hell, we really should be advising our clients differently, and we shouldn't be, just sort of saying, oh yeah, carry on smoking and drinking, to use the patient analogy, passing around. What you need to be doing is making, healthier stuff, not, and trying to do more interesting stuff. So it's changed the way I feel about the work we do, and the work I do, and the work that gives me, that motivates me to get out of bed in the morning. And even since we last spoke, which is a while ago, massive things have changed. As a result of changing our focus and emphasis, we've met completely different people. And instead of just meeting a bunch of greedy venture capitalists who want to make a shitload of money, which we still meet lots of them, and I'm quite happy to meet them. So if any of them are listening, do come and see us. But but what we realised was actually there were 4 areas that we should focus on, and one was actually where money is being invested. Talking to investors who wanted to invest in projects that were actually going to make a fundamentally big difference. Second one was innovators who've got really cunning, clever ways of doing things that differently, so that either that's in food or drink or in lifestyle, making products differently, changing their supply chains, using all sorts of innovations right through from the inception of something through to the end. The third thing is meeting policymakers, and who thought you'd be talking to lawyers and politicians when you went to art school. That was the last thing I thought I was going to be doing. And then the fourth one is consumers, obviously, where we spent years looking at consumers and trying to convince consumers to do things differently. And actually what we realized is that consumers only do what they're told by people like us, frankly. I mean, it's an assumption. It sounds arrogant, actually, so apologies for that. But, if we're good at our jobs, we get consumers to do things differently. And it's a question of making the right choice, the easy choice for those consumers now. And for 25 years, I think we were making the easy choice, not the right choice. And actually, a lot of the businesses that I look back and we work with, I feel, I'm sure they feel as embarrassed as I do about the fact that we made some pretty serious errors of judgment, and that we fundamentally have to fix that. So back to your very first question, Dan, which was, how did my parents influence me? I think because to the best of their knowledge, they had no idea that the choices they were making would have such horrific consequences. But they embedded in me a sort of sense of, a sense of curiosity, a thirst, a sort of valuing some really interesting, things. They really encouraged and nurtured that creativity that you say that schools deprive, and they allowed me to fail catastrophically, as it turned out, at school. But they allowed me to do that, and they didn't berate me. They just helped me find my path, and to some extent my brother as well. And I think back to today and my children, and what I think is, I compare myself. Both my parents passed away, sadly. But I think about them always. And I think that actually trying to make sure that my children, are well equipped to deal with what is a very, very, very big challenge, and are, able to find joy in solving those problems rather than live in mortal fear. Sort of like Asterix and Obelix with the cloud, the sky was going to fall on their heads, which ironically it was, just now, that's all. But, that for me is the sort of beautiful cycle, isn't it? Of, my daughter wants to be a biochemist. I spent yesterday with her, listening to where she wants to go to university, these people talking about molecular biochemistry, and my other one wants to is a linguist. And you think, Jesus, the world they're going into, there's some amazingly interesting challenges, and what they've all got to do is to focus on making, good choices and being long-term thinkers, thinking really bloody big, actually, and making sure that when they do make decisions, that they dive deep enough to understand whether or not those choices that they're making, those big ideas, are correct. And whether or not they de-risk the chances of us repeating history and fucking things up again. But they've also got to move bloody fast to get there. Because, I'm afraid there ain't no, the clock is ticking fast. So hence that's the mantra. I'm sorry I've sort of darted around in some sort of attention deficit. sort of
no,
way.
it's Perry. It's brilliant. It's so interesting seeing your parents then kind of yourself and now your kids, and the kind of the nexus through all of this is this thirst for knowledge, it's this curiosity, it's this doing the right thing, and in many ways the kind of your family values tie into the think big, dive deep, swim fast. It's absolutely brilliant. And I think for listeners, having that mantra, no matter what you're doing, is so important. But then I think adding more colour to that, it's about doing the right thing. And I think, as you said, it's so easy to do the wrong thing, especially through the kind of sustainability lens. It's absolutely brilliant. One thing I want to go back to, and you talked about your dad going to the pub, and this guy was basically, chilling pints of iron, essentially.
Lead, yeah.
Lead. Sorry.
Lead.
And then you said you almost act as almost like a doctor of businesses and brands. Go in, give some context, and then dive deep into the problem. Is there a specific example of that? Because I think that would really help listeners. Yeah,
I think there's 1,000 examples of that, actually. I mean, which have gone back for a long time, which is, so and I'll have to anonymize some of this because we're under NDAs and things like that. So I don't want to be, but it's fine because the stories are relevant. But, we've grown quite significantly even since I last saw you. We've hired some really interesting, very experienced people, and we've, as I said, we've gone into the States now, and we've set up a little business. Well, it's a strategic company out there, which is virtual, which it's called If You Don't Ask, and it's all about this thirst for knowledge. It's all about asking the difficult questions, the right questions, the questions that are going to surface stuff that perhaps others would be uncomfortable asking. So If You Don't Ask is a strategic side to our business. That is this whole thing about before you make any sort of recommendation, you have to go through a bunch of observations, and you have to like my father, you'd examine the patient and you'd make some observations, and then you'd make some provocations. You provoke them into sort of all sorts of things to just see what the reactions are. And then you would make your recommendations, and that's what we do. And the examples I would give you are, we're working with a business that's trying to deal with the landfill issue in the UK alone. So it's actually, I think I'm allowed to tell you this. If I tell you all of this and then I have to ring you and go, like, shit, you're going to have to cut that bit out. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll get my scissors out, mate. No worries.
Yeah, no, but it's really interesting. So this is a company that came to us and said, do you know how many nappies there are in landfill a year in the UK alone? And I said, no. And they said, disposable nappies, 3 billion a year. 3 billion nappies go into landfill every year. And you're like, what the fuck? You're joking. Yeah, and of course, then you extrapolate that out into the rest of the world. It is phenomenal, and of course, it's got an enormous carbon impact because the energy that goes into making these disposable nappies is horrific. And there's all sorts of implications of and they were only invented, by the way, 100 years ago. So my parents, when we grew up, used reusable nappies, which were basically towels with a nappy pin, and a lady came along and she invented the first disposable nappy, thinking it was a great time saver. Again, a classic unintended consequence, a consumer-led piece of work that she did to sort of, let's make life easy, not necessarily make the right choice easy. Let's make it, the easy choice the easy choice. She invents disposable nappies. If she had known back then what we now know, would she have started that business? Hence our line, what would you do differently if you could start your business again today? That's our leading line about If You Don't Ask and Big Fish. And so the example I'm going to give there is so how do you solve that problem? Well, obviously some bright spark comes along, and says, well, let's go back to reusable nappies. Well, yeah, if you've got a baby and you tell me how excited you are about that, you're probably not going to be going like, do you know what? I'm not going to compromise on that. So I suppose the example of the diagnosis is to then go and actually observe what it is that's upsetting people about the idea of giving up disposable nappies. In the same way as we've worked on projects where it's about giving up alcohol, non-alcoholic booze, non-alcoholic booze. Literally, there's no such thing as it. But, beers or gins or spirits or whatever without alcohol, you've still got to go and observe and see what it is that's preventing people from adopting these things, either from going back to the way things were or adopting new things. And so I think, back to the point, or staying on the point of how do you know, and where do you go looking for these insights? You can go and ask consumers what they think. And if you do what they tell you, all you're going to do is make the wrong choice. Because they do not have the answers. Because if they did, they'd be multi-millionaires sitting on yachts, smoking cigars, going, fucking hell, I tell you what, I kind of sorted out the bloody mate. They all had that wrong, didn't they? I mean, that's why it always amazes me that there are all these terrible research companies. I mean, absolutely shite research companies that spend their entire lives sitting doing these terrible bloody presentations about research. Where you go, and so basically what the consumers are telling you to do is this. And you think, no, that's precisely the opposite. What they're actually doing is they're just exposing how shit your product is, and you're going to go and sell them more of that shit. You know, so really it's about going and doing a bit more of investigative work around the edges and trying to see actually, you know, what would the world, you know, destroy any associations if everyone woke up with sort of massive memory loss and no one knew there was such a thing as a disposable nappy. They wouldn't fucking expect one, would they? So you've kind of got to sort of you've got to go and reboot. You've got to rethink, think like a startup, and get people to sort of, first of all, imagine that within their own business, and to kind of really, I mean, this is difficult. The world has got to do this now. I mean, this is like, you know, we've got trillions of pounds worth of infrastructure that is now, frankly, redundant. Because if we carry on using it, you know, if we carry on using coal for steel, or we use oil for, you know, heating and you know, it's mad. We've got to reboot and rethink fast. So sorry, I'm leaping around here, but what I'm really trying to say is that mindset of looking in and going, actually, do you know what? If you want to change category, if you want to get people to completely rethink and to really fundamentally change the way they eat, they grow, the way that they consume things, then you have to go right back to the beginning, right back deep into the supply chain. So if you're growing food, you know, is a field the best place to grow food? If you're going to deal with, what do you deal with baby excrement from the age of 0 to 3 before they can learn to go and, you know, sit on a loo? Well, come up with some bloody clever new innovations, maybe. Or perhaps don't sell them disposable nappies. Maybe if they were banned and you couldn't actually, you know, there was a law that said you can't buy these things, you know. So people stop smoking when they ban smoking. So, you know, prohibition can be a good thing in certain areas. So sometimes design, which is what we started out doing all those years ago, is about designing solutions that might be to reach politicians, to reach, you know, policymakers, before you start just trying to, you know, polish the turd, so to speak, of a terrible product. You know, you actually sort of have to go deep back into the systemic strategies of these businesses and go, do you know what? You need to change your business model. You know, you used to be a cigarette company selling tobacco. You know, now you're a vape business or something. Look at I mean, I know vaping's terrible, but they did an extraordinary job, didn't they, of rethinking their category pretty fast. And yeah, they ended up with something, maybe that's a terrible example, but
got me, like, I think I told you last time, I used to be a bit of a smoker. The vapes have got me now, Perry.
You're on the old vapes.
Honestly, it's so bad. Like, they're worse for you than cigs, because you just end up on them all day. And like, I do a lot of writing, so I need the nicotine. And I'm just like, this is 10 times worse. I'll literally show you, like, I've now got these,
your jewel.
I've got these lozenges now, these 4-gram lozenges that I'm literally like chinning back all day, every day. But yeah, I completely agree. Like, they've changed the way. Yeah, they've completely remodeled the kind of proposition, and I feel personally that the vape is just the next smoking epidemic or pandemic.
Yeah, well, there's actually a brilliant thing on Netflix about that you should watch. It's all about that. I think it's a series called Explained or something like that. But you know, it's genius. But so I suppose to the point of growing food, you know, how should we be growing our food so that we can return soil? You know, is it about regenerative farming? Is it about putting stuff in greenhouses? Is it about subaquatic farms? You know, is it about changing what we eat? Is it about, actually, do you know what? We need to make kelp the most delicious and popular food on the planet, because you could replant the size of the Amazon rainforest, you know, under the surface of the sea, cost effectively, making absolute fortunes, you know, farming kelp and recreating ecosystems. There's probably unintended consequences that come with all of these initiatives. But the point is that I never thought, not even 7 or 8 years ago, that we would be so fascinated by, but also driven by, and realize that actually the source of the river, the source of the brief, you've just got to keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until you realize that you found the fundamental thing that is going to make a difference. And what we've chosen to do is to say we can't solve all of these problems, and we are only good at really a very narrow band of stuff, which is still huge. So we said, well, actually we're kind of going to use carbon as our single measure, even though we know that's bollocks, because there are so many different scientific ways of trying to do that. But interestingly, if you think about it, whether or not you're trying to help get girls into education in parts of the world where they're still having 8, 9, or 10 children, they're being they have no rights, they're not staying in education, all that kind of stuff. Those initiatives still have a carbon impact. And that's why, all of the things that brands do, whether it's to do with where they source their ingredients, where their labor forces are, we, in terms of the Northern Hemisphere, are responsible for the shocking and atrocious things that are happening now. And we've got to sort it out. And I say I feel a part of that community because I've been doing it for a long time. And I'm lucky enough to work with some pretty amazing businesses that are big enough to make a difference and who are now willing to change. And that's really amazing. But, as a creative person who is interested in those things ever since I was a boy, and, someone who is probably a sort of deluded optimist utopian sort of thinker, I'm surrounded by some realists, which is fantastic. We've got some amazing strategists and, people who turn these things into reality. And I think that's what, for me, is, the exciting thing for anyone who's an entrepreneur or in the food industry who's hungry for success, is if you're focusing now on being, the most woke, sustainable guy making coffee on the corner of the high street, well, good on you, but it's not going to make a difference. I'm sorry. Actually, it's, what are Subway doing? What are these big businesses doing? And where I've, shunned them in the past, and like I was a rabid dog and said, they're just fucking the planet. I actually think that we all have a duty of care to either, boycott the ones that won't change, or to put significant pressure, both from a sort of consumer's point of view and from an investor's point of view and a policymaker's point of view, and also from an innovator's point of view. They should be basically absolutely waking up every day to us bombing them with all of these sorts of, offers of money if they do the right thing, offers of, ideas if they're doing the right thing, and, offers of law change, all of these things that will turn these big, massive businesses from being, planet fuckers who produce utterly shit food and things that are terribly bad for us, into stuff that's genuinely going to sort the place out. And I think that's what I'm going to spend the next 20 years of my life doing. And I hope that my company does the same. And I think that hopefully my children will see that and not think I'm such a twat after all. Trying to leave the place in some sort of shape that feels like it's on the right trajectory, and be an optimist and positive about the fact that I don't think we're all doomed unless everybody just carries on as they are. And, if nobody changes, nothing changes. And so, it all sounds good, but you need to see evidence. So I've been working recently, and this is why it's all very sort of cloak and dagger, because it's all, getting money put into it, but on things where people are talking about thousands of hectares of different ways of growing food using technology that would blow your mind. I mean, honestly. So going to America seemed the right thing to do, because that's the place where there are 300 million people who are really totally and utterly ignorant of what's going on, and they have no idea, the poor things, that the more that they consume, the bigger the problem they're making. And, you know, the fact that they pick up a fresh piece of, you know, whether it's a tomato or a cucumber or whatever it is that they're picking up that they eat as fresh, the fact that that has been grown somewhere where there's some human cost to it, there is definitely a planet cost to it, there'll definitely be a carbon impact to it. It will be somehow degrading the soils because it'll have used nitrogen and all that kind of stuff, and it'll have been, I guarantee it will have been, even if it's organic, it probably will have had some sort of compromise. You know, this is the world that's going to change so fast, and actually people were going to have to get their heads around food that perhaps looks a bit robotic, that perhaps, you know, feels like it should be, you know, it come out of a space age sort of movie that's, you know, the kind of food that would be grown in Mars. You know, but actually that is how we're going to have to grow our food, and it's going to require billions and billions of pounds of investment and an amazing amount of the most cunning and brilliant people in the world to collaborate. And I'm meeting these people. I'm meeting people who are finding alternatives for palm oil. I'm meeting people who are finding new ways of growing food that will replace oil for plastics. I'm meeting, you know, it's incredible. It's just amazing, and it's only been happening the last 3 years. So yeah, I'm right off on one, aren't I? Sorry.
No. It's brilliant, because I love how much passion you've now got, and this kind of, as you said, this thirst for knowledge. It's kind of, the sustainability piece is now clearly well, it should be on everyone's radar, but it's on yours for sure. And there's just so much in that, and I think
the food tastes better. That's the mad thing.
Of course. And I think so there's quite a few sort of conversational pathways from that I want to kind of explore. So the first is what you're basically saying, like, you've got to observe the context, and then through observing you can actually see it's not some fucking Consumer Report, which I think are a load of, you know,
total bollocks.
Torpid tosh as well. It's just a waste of time.
Vote winning.
yeah, exactly. So you go in and you observe on kind of the ancillary side of things. And I think for listeners trying to come up with new brands and new ways of doing things, that's where you need to be looking. I've got this thing about looking at the category. If you look at the category and you go into a supermarket, you're just going to look like that category. Look at protein bars, look at, unfortunately now, a lot of the dairy alt milks are sort of moving into that direction where everything looks the same. And I think for anyone listening to this, you've kind of got to go and look and find, almost like a sort of ravenous truffle pig looking for ideas elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the sustainability piece, changing consumer behaviour with the you know, all this meat, the plant-based movement, etc. So what I would love to understand is, and I think this would be great for listeners, is how do you observe the behaviour, and then going back to your point about manipulating the brain in the right way, like, how do you do that at Big Fish? And is there an example?
There's many ways
of a food brand, that is actually solving that problem you were talking about earlier about the sustainability bit? Like, is there an example of where you've done that?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few examples. I think I'll just give it a little bit of a think. I think the best example for me is when years ago this all started, and I didn't even realise just how important it was we started working with Riverford Organic Farms, who were called Riverford then, or were they called, I can't remember. Yeah, I think they just called Riverford or Riverford Organic Farms. They still are called Riverford Organic Farms. But there's a chap called Guy Watson who founded it many, many years ago, and he's a farmer. And they were growing, but they were trying to deal with how are we going to grow and how are we going to scale our business. In a similar time, we'd worked with Abel and Cole, who were also, Keith Abel had founded this organic veg box business, and they were basically wonderful. They were friends, but also arch enemies. You know, they knew each other, and but they were quite different. One was a farmer who felt very passionate, and they were both super bright guys. Very good. Keith had been a barrister, and Guy had, they'd been at Oxford, and sort of, I actually don't know what Guy did, but he bloody bright. So they had an amazing brain and an amazing ability to talk and be clear in their communication. But Guy's rants were all about basically people don't understand the impact of what they're eating today will make a difference tomorrow. And this was 20 odd years, long time ago that he started it, and we met them God knows how many years ago. And I was quite naive then and thought, God, this guy really he's pretty intense. He really feels very strongly, but the business is quite small. So, it's still that sort of 25, 30 million, or whatever it was, £1 million business that is only eaten by rich people who like mud on their carrots and makes them sort of feel better. And the more mud you put on, the more you can charge. So, I always sort of thought they might be putting mud on, kind of perfectly eating carrots, but that sort of psychology of things. But actually, through working with them, we got to know them pretty well. I spent time, actually, funny enough, I went surfing with Guy the first time I met him. Instead of meeting him in a room, actually sat in a rock, had a chat with him, and you get a different conversation. So, in answer to your question about how, the first thing is to not sit in a boardroom. Is to go where the thing is, go where either the customers are, or where you're selling your product, or where it's happening, and be in the real bloody world. Don't sit on Zoom and think you're going to solve a problem, on a whiteboard with post-it notes. That isn't where you're going to go and find out. You go and actually talk to people in the real world where things are happening. And so when you saw down in Devon what they were doing, and you kind of sit and have a chat with a guy on the beach and you're watching the waves, it totally changes your perspective. And you don't start thinking like a business. You start thinking like either a consumer, or you get into the head of what it's like to be a farmer and whatever. Anyway, he just had one word that just kept cropping up the whole time. And he was basically obsessed with greed. And it was just really clever, because that was the fundamental issue. The issue wasn't we can't sell enough carrots and the world's not buying enough organic. The actual fundamental issue is greed. And it's just people are greedy, and therefore greed makes people do the wrong thing. And that's unfortunate. And so I remember we had this sort of, talking about capitalism, and I was like, but capitalists and venture capitalists and all these sort of generally measure the success on how much money they have. And he goes, it really fucks me off, because it's complete fucking bollocks. And then he sort of stood up and did a sort of YouTube video about it. And yeah, I think so, we don't necessarily come. In fact, the answer to your question is we go looking for the answers that are already there. It's not that we're coming up with any clever answers. It's just helping people, as know what not to be focusing on, actually, and what they should be focusing on. And he was so articulate. It was about spending time with the person in that business who was the visionary, and then distilling down what he had to say, because he had so much to say, like me today, into just a very succinct message that would get through to that would inform their decision in every part of the business, which is, why are we doing this? Yes, there's a purpose, which is to hopefully convert people to food that won't fuck the planet. But actually, are we doing this for the right reasons? Are we doing it for greed because we want to make more money? Are we doing this because it's the right product, grown the right way? And actually, if people discover that, and if they understand the motivations, then they're actually more likely to buy it, because those people that we're talking to are highly, highly motivated by that kind of thing. So Riverford is a very successful business, but look at all of the organic veg boxes and all of those things, and the way that whole movement changed probably in the last 10 years. So it went exponential. Suddenly everyone cared very deeply about veg, where it came from, even the retailers who they were competing with, because they were a direct consumer business. And actually, we came up with this rallying cry, which was just live life on the veg. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but actually we plastered it massive on their vans and everything. And it cropped up in a lecture. I met a student the other day who was at Oxford, and they said, oh yeah, my tutor at Oxford used that phrase the other day. I went, what? Yeah, he said, yeah, he was talking to us about sustainability. And in fact, he actually was talking about live life on the veg. And I said, oh, that's a Riverford slogan, isn't it? I was like, well, isn't it amazing how these things enter into society? They get into popular culture. And the point about live life on the veg was it's a philosophy that was informed not only just about, living life on the veg as a fun thing, but also what lay behind live life on the veg. It was an entire manifesto. It was an entire approach to saying, a bit like Michael Pollan, eat food, mostly plants, not too much, and make sure that that they come from the right place. So again, terrible explanation of how we go looking for things, but that might have just come out of a conversation with sitting on the rocks after going surfing. It would never have come out of a conversation, I don't think, if 6 people were standing around listening to him writing things down on Post-it notes. It might have done.
Yeah, no, there's just so much in that for listeners. I think even if it's taking kind of customers out, if it was up to me, I'd never go to a buyers meeting. I'd always rather kind of take them elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? Because we did this event at Le Bab where it's a restaurant in London. It sounds way better than it is. It sounds like I'm basically saying a peanut butter kebabi. Like, it's actually a very revered restaurant, Perry. Yeah, it's like getting a doner kebab and whacking some peanut butter on there. But we took our buyers there, and it's like, let's just not talk about work. Let's get to know them as people, and that's actually unlocked really interesting insights.
Yeah, on the edges, exactly.
Yeah, it's on the edges, and I think anyone listening to this is look at the edges, and I think what you said there about sitting by the waves, they're crashing down, and the word greed then transpired to kind of live life on the veg, and in many respects, I'm the kind of Simon Sinek's, or Sinek, I don't know how to say his name.
Yeah, Simon Sinek.
It's kind of ricocheting around my brain now, but it's almost like, what is the founder's why? So in Riverford's case, it's greed. And then you turn that in, that why then kind of links to the consumer, which is the live life on the veg. And that's how you get it to link together. Yeah, the how. Yeah, that's exactly it. For listeners who may have a concept, the one that kind of springs to mind is kombucha, right? So kombucha is a great product, tastes amazing, really good for you. And I think some brands struggle, especially the nascent ones who aren't, a lot of the kombucha brands, it's a load of bollocks. It's basically just says kombucha on the tin, basically. But some who are doing it properly is, how do they get their why to speak to the consumer and cross that chasm? Because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the Riverford example, I suppose the interesting thing about being anti-something, like anti-greed. So their stance as a challenger brand is, we stand against greed. Everything we do is not done because it'll make people rich. It's because we're going to do the right thing. We're going to grow veg the right way. And actually, as a result of that, we will make better veg, and people will then buy our veg, and they will like what we do, and we will create a following. And, and it's an incredibly successful franchise business. And others have emulated it, and many big businesses have come to us and sort of said, we could never buy Riverford, but we want to recreate it because it's nice. Guess what? Ironically, that is the cruel irony, isn't it? Riverford's not for sale, which is hilarious. Because now it's owned by. So he then said, right, we're going to make it an employee-owned business. So it's genuinely employee-owned, which is amazing, isn't it?
That's amazing.
So yeah, and actually it's a franchise, so it could scale massively if it wanted. They could really, really scale it. So it could become big enough to make a difference. And I think it's also big enough in its influence that it's already making a difference because it's inspired others to follow. It's educated people and it's inspired them to follow. With kombucha, I think, again, it's the question of not why for the consumer. For me, it's what the why there was is why Guy got out of bed in the morning. Guy believed something and lots of people followed him because he had what he believes, rather like my dad had a belief. My dad he felt it was important to help, make patients better, and he really believed that. I think all doctors do. You wouldn't go to doctor to make money. I think you wouldn't go into farming organic veg in a world that thinks that that's for hippies and people who like me who are sort of on the edges. But actually, to try and democratize something, which is every brand's dream, is growth. To get good growth from people who are going to be actively preferring your brand over someone else's. What's going to make them prefer that? Is it because you've got a Simon Sinek golden circle sort of on a PowerPoint deck somewhere, beautifully written in a nice typeface that says, our mission is to, we believe this is why we do and everything we do it, and what we actually said is kombucha. I think probably that Simon Sinek thing, which I've done so many thousand times with people and we've stopped doing, was brilliant. It's now been it still is brilliant, but I think people have forgotten the exercise. They kind of, it's like, I'm going to fill out my wine now. And you go, yes, that's going to do you absolutely no good whatsoever, because unless you actually fucking believe it, it's just bollocks. And the purpose is that Steve Jobs actually did believe. Guy does believe. And therefore, what is it you actually do believe and give a shit about? And, actually a thinly veiled purpose that's just there as a marketer's, wet dream to get more customers isn't going to help. So I'd say with kombucha, it was a new category that no one had ever heard of kombucha or knew what it was a few years ago. Suddenly, still probably most people don't actually, if I'm honest. I'd imagine the majority of consumers in the world probably might have heard of it, but they probably haven't tried it. So I would be looking at the kombucha. We don't work with the kombucha brand actually, but I would be looking at the kombucha brand and going, okay, what problem are we trying to solve actually in the world? As I was saying earlier, is kombucha helping? Is it helping people stop drinking? Is it helping people, not drink sugary drinks? What is it helping people do genuinely? And rather than just try and say, sell them some sort of, and yet another bloody drink, why not actually find a group of people, or find a problem and solve it? That's what you need to do. And if that problem can be solved directly because it's got some direct physical benefits, then you're onto a winner, because that's like sort of selling ibuprofen, isn't it? It actually does function and it helps your headache. But if it's a less tangible problem you're solving, but perhaps you're providing people an alternative to drinking Coca-Cola, or whatever, and you're weaning them off something else, then my guess would be, my humble guess here would be, just know damn well who you're targeting and why, not because there's a huge market opportunity. That does help because it's scalable, but because you do the same as they do every fucking day, and you actually do drink it because it's the thing that you drink because it's better for you or whatever. Your why should be baked into the genuine reason for doing something. I don't drink kombucha. Maybe I should actually. I drink a lot of coffee now, and I used to drink decaffeinated coffee, and I've moved on to caffeinated coffee. And I sort of think, God, if someone could come up with something that tasted as good as the caffeinated coffee, I'd be there, because I really have got a love of coffee, and I kind of, after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I really sort of shouldn't be drinking it. And if someone came up to me and said, I've got the coffee that is the coffee of all coffees, that is the decaf to die for, it probably would only be, relevant to a few people probably to start with. But I bet you they'd find, if people like me were on podcasts like yours going, oh my God, have you tried the new blah, blah, blah? And that's how brands grow, as we know. They don't grow through advertising. So I suppose people starting businesses, don't forget that you're starting out with minimum viable audiences. Just be amazing for 50 people. Be amazing for 100 people. Don't be, just yet another bloody kombucha that just sits there with celebrating the marginal difference between your equally good kombucha next door. Have a bloody purpose. So we did a snack called Howder with this lovely lady. I think I might have mentioned it on the last time I was with you. And,
Sorry, what was Howder? Sorry.
So Howder is bloody amazing. Yeah, it is incredible. So Falu founded this business, and she and her family, I can't remember how long ago they founded it, but not that long ago. But she founded this business because she loves making food, and she's a brilliant cook. And she's got 2 boys, and she used to always sort of feed them lots of snacks and things like this. And she made all sorts of stuff. And she went off to India and found authentic snacks that they couldn't really get, that were things like bakawadi, which I'd never even heard of, and sort of these things that she calls onion bhajis, but they look more like sort of peanuts, but they're kind of onion snack things. And she just said they really loved these authentic Indian snacks that they couldn't really get over here. So she did all these recipes, got them made in India, and then I think they're Jains as a family, and so I think the Jains philosophy is, when we first met them, it's going back a bit, is to give back. That it's a fantastic philosophy, and we realised that Falu wasn't making snacks to make money. Her passion was to help all of the children in India that go to school get a school lunch, because they weren't getting a lunch. They didn't get school lunches. So she teamed up with this charity that she found that helps children have school lunches. And so for every pack of Howder, she said, I'm going to make these snacks in order to help these children eat school lunches. And the incredible thing is that a school lunch in these schools in India only costs 5 pence. And that's amazing. And these beautiful snacks, have a look at them on our website. They're called Howder.
So how do you spell that?
Howdah, Howder Authentic Indian Snacks. And she'd sold them for a while, but they weren't really getting traction because they were in bags that looked like snacks in the Indian snack aisle. So we did a radical rethink, and we got to know her rather like Guy, and found out what made her tick. And their mission wasn't about selling lots of snacks. Their mission was to serve 1 million school lunches. And of course, that's actually very easy when you sell a bag of snacks. And incredibly, the business has been amazing. So we measure how many school lunches are sold, not necessarily how many bags of snacks are sold. But look them up; they are incredible. And so the line we came up with, which is, it's the snack that gives back. And for every bag you buy, you get a school lunch. And for the benefit of the consumer, you can take your taste buds on tour. You can go to India authentically in your mouth with a bakawadi or an onion bhaji, or we actually did I'm afraid do a Bombay mix, which I was delicious. But it's not
hungry. You're making me hungry. I'm just thinking of onion
bhaji.
Right
I will send you some Howder, because in fact I've got a tea towel somewhere. I'll show you the package. Here we go. I made all these. Here's for your authentic soundtrack here. So we made all these tea towels, which are like big packs. Because the tea towel's good. So you've seen that? That's the packaging.
Oh yeah. I know exactly it.
So a Howder is actually the chair that's on top of that sits on top of an elephant, which is how they named it after. So yeah, look, you go. Take your taste buds on board. Get snacks and get back. Anyway, so we shared risk. We took a stake in the business. We helped to find some investors, and we rebranded the business. And it's doing really well. And her son's involved in it now. And it really is all about a genuine purpose, and it is not bollocks. And Bill's been out there serving lunch with these children. Helping in India when he went out to India. Bill's my business partner, and Falu's just done an incredible job. So, great food, very affordable, and the double placebo effect of not only does the packaging look nice and the products are great, but you also get the feel-good factor. You genuinely off. I mean, what's 5p? And you don't even notice it. And it's baked in, excuse the pun, of the baked snack. So, sorry, I'm rabbiting on.
No, it's brilliant. And I think kind of going back to sort of the Riverford and the greed and the example of Howder, there's so much in that for listeners in asking, not doing this kind of the Simon Sinek, who's a bit of a slick Rick, do you know what I mean?
He's good, I love him.
He's very good, he's brilliant. But I think the question you said to ask, which is, why do I actually get out of bed in the morning, is a much better question to ask. And then, what does it do to help people? Like, those two questions will really help you kind of pierce through these, because categories are so crowded because they're probably not asking those questions. They're doing it to make dough and sell packets of whatever. And And I think that's really interesting. And the more I think about it, it's our kind of mutual friend David Gluckman, is he talks a lot about.
David, yes, he's a legend.
He's the absolute hero. Is he talks about, don't put your features and benefits on the kind of the front of the packaging, because that's not going to palpably punch people right where they need to be punched, or not punch, it's maybe a bit too intense, but
no. Yeah, jab, jab, punch.
Yeah, but what you said, so like for example with those snacks, they could have said like, I don't know, I haven't actually tried them, but like, vegan, 0%, blah blah blah, which is great, but by asking why do I get out of bed in the morning and what does it do to help people, suddenly you've got take your taste buds on tour and snacks that give back. Now that has got a bit of va-va-voom about it, and I think there's so much in that for listeners, because kind of, if you were to read a book about this, most people say, just put your 3 key messages on the pack, but what you do so well at Big Fish, and this is what I wanted to dive deep into, is how to get that palpable punch. And it's really interesting, the Riverford and the Howder examples.
I mean, just on that note about process that you need to go through and the features that David mentioned about don't put your features and benefits on. I mean, there's a great little rule of thumb, which is that Julian Granville told me years ago when we did Bowden, which, I remember we were doing these catalogues, and under the sort of, you still get it on every website, don't you? There's the product, there's the price, there's the features. But actually what you want is benefits. And so I remember Julian used to say, features tell, benefits sell. And of course, the classic example of that is good old Apple versus Microsoft. Microsoft did the old film, didn't they, that took the piss out of themselves about designing the iPod cover, the iPod packaging. And it was kind of, Microsoft saying, if Microsoft designed the iPod, they did, back in the days when those things were bought, it was, 10 gigabytes of RAM, 230 terabytes of hard disk space, 30 megahertz. Whereas Apple would say, all the world's songs in your pocket, on a walk. So that the point is that the benefits of those features need to be interpreted by a slick brat like us, kind of going, turn those megahertz into a benefit. That's what you need to do. And actually, for your listeners, I would say that there are a friend of mine called Chris Chen has got a brilliant framework that we use all the time. Which I did tell him I stole it, and he didn't seem to charge me money, which is great. But he's super bright, and he is a carbon. He's actually launched a carbon. He's consulted on carbon for many years. He's a world expert in it. He's also launched a venture capital fund that's only focused on carbon sequestering businesses. It's amazing. These are the super visionaries, and he has a brilliant framework, which is question one is, what are the key drivers in industry that are really going to to shape your business, and that's a hard-nosed commercial investment thought, which is, what are the big drivers? That's the first thing you look at. Where are the big changes? Because if you're working in an area that's too small, it might be fine for a little lifestyle business. You need to carve out a living, fine. But generally that's going to cause you some jip because you're not thinking big enough. Second thing is, once you look at the big, whether it's regulation or the competitors or trends or consumers getting pissed off or whatever it is, you then say, well, what are the second question is, what are the opportunities that offers you? Because people don't sit down and look at that. They don't go, oh, I tell you what was it we were saying today? There might be something like, what I'm just thinking about. Yeah, if suddenly the law says there's no, high saturated sugars and fats, whatever that one, HFSS, I can never remember the acronym. If they're suddenly putting a big ban on those foods advertising, sure as hell, you can see that there's going to be loads of companies trying to wriggle, but that lends you a huge opportunity to go into healthier options in all those big categories now. And those big companies can't re-engineer their brands to be healthy. You can't have a healthy Bounty. You can't have a healthy Mars bar. It isn't going to happen. So you mentioned snack bars earlier. Yeah. So, someone's going to stop buying something and start buying something. So there's huge opportunities in those big regulation changes, for example. then it's like, what is it you're really good at? Because that's the other thing is we get lots of people who walk through our door and they kind of go, I'm going to start a so-and-so business. You go, how many times have you done that before? And who do you know? And who's in your business who's done it? Oh, no, I've never done it before. Well, it's going to take you years. So I know that everyone's got to start somewhere, but it's always, I don't know if you know the guys behind Dash Water, for example. They're brilliant. So that, they were at Corsten, and then they've done Dash because they've learnt their trade at Corsten. I think one of them might have been at Innocent as well. But that's an amazing business, isn't it? Aluminium, no plastic, super recyclable. They're using wonky veg, they're using fizzy water. They've done a bloody good job actually, and that's a really clever. You mentioned kombucha. I mean, those guys have done it with just water and a tiny bit of fruit.
It tastes delicious. The raspberry one is. I got one from Waitrose the other day.
It's genius, isn't it? And it's great. Yeah. It's clever capitalism because you're selling less for more. I mean, that's clever. You're reducing consumption. I mean, that doesn't have to have loads of sugar, loads of fruit in it. It's just got hardly anything in it, and they're charging more money for it, and people want more of it. I mean, that's pretty clever, isn't it? So, there's an ambition there, isn't there? Can we all try and sell less and make more, I suppose? The other thing is, how big is your ambition? Make sure you define your ambition. The fifth question is always, what priorities, what priorities mean that, it's really important of what are you going to prioritize, because trying to do everything at the same time is a disaster. What's the rationale for those things? And go and ask all your friends and the people who know whether or not you have got the right list. I always go and ask 3 or 4 people I trust implicitly, or ask, my children actually to tell me most of the time. Second, the seventh question is, how are you going to phase that approach? What have you got the resources? I mean, we've got companies that turn up at our door and they go, I've got this massive ambition. You go, so how much money have you got? Well, we haven't raised any money. Okay. Or the other way around, we've got people who come up with really terrible ambitions and they've raised 10 million quid. You go, what do you need 10 million quid for? Oh, well, we've given away 40% of the business. You go, are you mad? You haven't even got a plan. I mean, what are you going to spend the money on? So it's kind of crazy. And then I suppose the other thing is to sort of understand, whether or not you've got, here we go, this is a tricky one. Whether or not you've got the skills to do something, or whether you've got the right people and can you attract the right people. So many businesses start with noble intentions, but the product's shit because they've skimped on not getting a chef in. I mean, you work with Manolife, and that is an amazing product. We brand Whole Earth, but Manolife and Whole Earth, those are 2 peanut butters. I dare say, on this podcast, Manolife is an insanely good quality product. But it's what is it? Twice the price of Whole Earth? Must be.
Yeah. More or
Yeah.
less, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's more expensive than it should be, better than it needs to be. It positions itself right up there. But I mean, and it wouldn't probably hope to achieve the volumes at that price because it could. Not that many people could afford that peanut butter, but it's doing brilliantly. Now it's a great product. So again, I think it's sort of, have you got the right skills, the right partnerships? Do you need to go in even? Do you need to, rather than just people say, I need to raise money? Quite often, I think a lot of people should go, well, actually, maybe I should be buying a business. I mean, Jim Arvady bought a business to start the Coconut Collaborative because he started it with a ready-made ice cream making business. They don't make it, I think I can't remember when we make ice cream anymore, but it wasn't the core business. But what it got him was an existing few people that he needed. He needed a marketing person, a salesperson. So again, I think quite a lot of startups forget that you can actually go out there and find some ready-made things that you can make better. Don't always have to start from scratch. And then the last question is really my favourite one, which is, and so what's your not list? What's the list that you're going to look up every day and go, I'm not going to do that today? All the things that you're not going to do that will mean that you can do these things. You were the one who taught me about hyperfocus, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, no, it's the 80-20 rule is what I do, because I think to be honest, most founders I interview have this kind of ADD, scatty brain. I've kind of got that where I'm just trying to do a gazillion things at once. So I have to be very militant. I'm like, the question I ask myself on my to-do list, so chunder it all out, like vomitus, to get it all there. And then I just basically go like, the question I write on the top, literally on this this pad, is like, what would this look like if it was easy? And then when you ask that question, you basically bin off everything that just doesn't move the needle. Because yeah, so kind of there's two questions. What does success look like, and what would it look like if it was easy? Because I think you get, my brain by default, I have to put all these systems in place to kind of rein it back in. Goes off and starts carousing around with loads of like, silly things that don't actually move the needle. But yeah, so his question was, what are you not going to do?
The most thing is so based on all of these things, based on a strategy that you now know. You know what the big opportunities are because you know what the big drivers are. You know what capabilities you need. You know what resources. Sounds obvious, but actually, go through all that list and then you look at the end. You go, right, and what are we not going to do? And for us, that's really focused. Even our business and the businesses that we work with, the ones that are brutal about saying we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to just focus on that. They genuinely are the ones that succeed, and certainly at those early stages. Trying to do everything is a classic mistake of all these things you're trying to do, and you can't do them all well, especially if you're a food business. I mean, Charlie Bigham was great. He's got such an enormous business now, and by the way, we're a B Corp now, actually, but we're not quite. We will be next week, but it's taken us 2 years because for an old business that's been around, it's actually really hard. You have to change a lot. Whereas, if you're a startup, you just be a B Corp tomorrow. It's like, oh, God, tick all those boxes, you bastards. No, but it's brilliant. I love the whole. My wife took us through this process, and it's been pretty arduous, pretty thorough, and impressively diligent. And I think Charlie's also a B Corp, and people get B Corp classifications for different reasons. They're not always focused on the same thing, but it really asks you some very difficult questions. And it raises some important priorities. And I think, again, with people like Charlie, for example, who we've worked with for 24 or 5 years, there was a point where Charlie was sort of prolifically producing just every dish under the sun, making food for everyone, when we were all in those early stages. And it was growing, but it wasn't growing as fast as when he suddenly sat down and said, right, we're going to make 6 dishes really, really well. I think they cut something, I could be wrong here, but I seem to remember they cut like 50 lines or something insane. It was like massive rationalization. And suddenly the business just was up like that. Amazing. So I think, again, you go through a discovery phase of when you start a business, have I got a business here? You've got to try it, you kick it around, you try it with a few people. You then go from that discovery phase into the sort of validation phase, which bits work, which bits don't. And you should do that fast, the old fail fast. And then you take those bits and you say, well, how can we make those really efficient? I was reading a book, which is my daughter's book. I was trying to keep up with her. By that amazing Richard Dawkins. It was published in the 60s, I think, or 70s, called The Selfish Gene. Apparently,
I tried and failed on that. I was like, "This is."
Oh, really? I'm only sort of.
This is beyond me. Yeah.
I was up to the replicator gene, which is a replicator molecule or whatever, and a protein, and I was amazed at sort of. They were talking about how suddenly evolution happened when cells could learn to replicate. And when they learn to replicate, of course, they prolifically grow, and of course, some don't replicate, some mutate, which can be good and can be bad. And, it's that's the great thing about evolution, is there's all sorts of different interesting mutations. And I think, again, coming back to scaling a business from a startup, is you want to find what are the replicator cells in your business? What's the DNA that will replicate like crazy, and that good DNA in a company. I know it's an overused thing. Good DNA will really make a difference, and will replicate well. Bad DNA will not. And so much greed leads to some really shit short-term decisions, particularly if you're being opportunistic. And you get out of the starting blocks, you'll say, I've created a business and it's growing at 500% because you had £0, £1, and now you have 500 quid. Well done, But it's when you're starting to get into that stage of, well, we've got a reasonable size business here that's turning over, a few £100,000 or £1,000,000, say. And actually, if you've got some stuff that's wrong in there and you scale it, you're going to scale those wrong bits as much as you're going to scale the good bits. And that's going to cause you a massive headache. So you really got to get that third phase of validation and efficiency, You've got to get that right before you scale. And that's something I think a lot of people forget. And it's also the point at which you think, if I scale this, what is the impact going to be on the planet? And what's the impact going to be on humanity? And if I can scale something that's good, that's going to not get busted by the lawyers and the policymakers for saying, this is bad for people or this is wrong, then you're onto a winner, in my view.
I love that, and there's what you said about the DNA that replicates, and I think that's brilliant for listeners, because if you can get that core DNA, when you'll start hiring the right people, you'll start communicating the right way to customers, to consumers. And what I'm learning from you, Perry, as always brilliant, James, is you actually get the DNA by saying no, and you say no by saying no to projects. I think every entrepreneur is opportunistic. That's the reason they've got a business in the first place. The hardest thing is actually saying no to opportunities. And Stuart Forsyth from Minor Figures, I interviewed him the other week, and he basically says, as a brand, you define yourself by not what you are, but what you're not. And I thought that was really interesting.
Brilliant.
He says we are not trying to be a dairy oat milk, that even though they are, we're not trying to be that. We're trying to be the perfect accompaniment to a delicious cup of coffee. That's what we're trying to be. We're not trying to be like the others.
They're solving the problem of what do you put in your coffee. Yeah. Exactly. They're solving the problem that I was talking about earlier on. They're brilliant Minor Figures, very clever. They're solving a problem.
I went into the supermarket, or into Waitrose yesterday actually, and I looked at the category. And I was like, bloody hell! Everyone is trying to look like a milk. Most, as in they're trying to look. They've either got the green and the cues of the green and the blue, and then obviously Rude Health was I bloody love them, and Minor Figures, they really really stood out. And both of them, back to that sort of palpable punch on the shelf edge, they both gave me different messages. But I was like, the Minor Figures was kind of like, yeah, I want to go and fucking hang out in East London and sip some coffee, man. But
well, that is such a clever brand, and I think when I first saw that, I remember the team, when we were doing some whatever project, I think we were doing Good Hemp, and I saw those Minor Figures things, and I was like, that's really really clever, because it's just simple and actually going the exact opposite direction of everyone else. And as you say, it was appealing to a very niche but highly influential audience and made it cool. And it was hats off. I thought that was great. And you're right about this whole what you say no to, because guess what makes a nightclub really popular? Scarcity of invitation. Yeah. That whole scarcity thing is true at every level, isn't it? We humans are very odd. If it's free, we don't trust it. What's wrong with that? Why are you giving it to me free? There's that end of the spectrum. And if it's too exclusive, you can't. There's a level of exclusivity and scarcity that really starts to breed fascination, interest, and sort of a fear of missing out and all those sorts of things. And I think that's the lovely gamesmanship. If I get out of the worthy, sounding like Greta Thunberg every day, but I'm not going to apologise actually. But if I get out of that bit for a moment and move into the sort of, well, let's make the right choice, the easy choice for consumers, which is the fourth of these four big areas of investment, of innovation and policy. And then the fourth one is consumers. Poor old consumers, I'm one of them. We're just sheep grazing in the field that we're put in, and frankly, that field looks a bit more interesting over there. I'll sort of wander over and graze over there, but we can only graze on what we're given. And few of us in the food industry, and there's not that many, are there, have an immense amount of a duty of care to make sure that the right choice is the easy choice. And that doesn't mean necessarily kind of being all worthy. Actually, if something's fun, entertaining, delicious, it's like children, doing things that they don't want to do. You kind of decorate them with funny figures, or you distract them. And, lo and behold, they'll take the medicine, or they'll, do the homework. Or my children, when they were learning in their sort of early, 10 or 12, they have this thing called Quizlet, which actually I'm bringing into the business because it's genius. So Quizlet is absolutely brilliant, which is it's a way of gamifying learning. So you make the quizzes for your friends on a topic, and then you have to kind of play a matching game on different questions and answers. Because if kids like playing in class, well, make them play and learn. It's genius. And I think brands can do the same. You know, I keep sort of looking at Quizlet and going, that's every brand's dream, isn't it? To turn the unpalatable into palatable, you know, to distract people from the stuff that they probably will put them off buying something or consuming something, and focus them on the bits that they will really, you know, that they will think of as being beneficial or alluring. So that might be making something alluring because it's fun or it's different or it's colourful or it just feels fuzzy and warm. Or sometimes it has the counterintuitive play, which is my favourite one of last year, I think, is Liquid Death, which is one of my sort of favourite brands. Are you familiar with Liquid Death? Have you come across it?
Sounds amazing, though.
Okay, so when we went to America, because we've been out in America quite a lot, we discovered this brand, which everyone seems to know about, you know, in the sort of trendy world of branding. It's called Liquid Death, and it's absolutely hilarious. So it's water in a can. And their thing was, you know, to kill plastic. But the thing I never realised, which is why I feel bad about saying why it's a wonderful brand, is I thought they just took water out of a tap, put some fizz in it, and sold it in cans, and then it was becoming the fastest growing water brand in America. I then discovered, only the other day, I was like, they bring it from the bloody Alps. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I've just Googled it now. I mean, it's genius because you've segued perfectly onto my kind of final bit, actually, Perry. But yeah, which is I want to jump into America and the USA, but carry on with the Liquid Death.
Well, it does segue nicely because what happened in America was we were asked by a number of brands, businesses, to say, look, we've got these great European businesses that some of them have reached.
Sorry,
you know,
you cut out for a sec. Then sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, got you now. It was the bit about what happened in America is where we left off.
Oh, yeah. So what happened in America was we've been dabbling around in America for years because most of the businesses that we work with eventually get there somehow. Either just, you know, a small amount of distribution opportunities will give them different global sort of market distributors in different markets. But actually, suddenly, a couple of them were getting quite big and saying, look, we really need to focus our growth strategy on bigger markets, and America is a very alluring place for us. And so we were sent out by one company for sort of a 6-day. They didn't even come with us. They sent us out for 6 days to New York, 6 of us, and put us out. It was fantastic. We sort of just went out on a kind of like, go out there and come back and tell us what we should be thinking. So we went to California, we went to New York. And I didn't really know America very well at all. And I'd kind of been a few times, but I was like, wow, you know, it really is quite extraordinary out here. I mean, it is very different. And you know, there are brands out there that I'd never heard of. And even between states, you know, you could have a cult brand in one state and no one's ever heard it in the next door state. Or you've got a state with such sort of extraordinary cultural bias towards, you know, the ways of eating or ways of living that would be completely different to another. So it's just another continent with lots of countries in it, frankly. And it's such a it's a fragmented market. You know, it's got really big problems to solve. I mean, properly big problems. You look at things like what they call K-12, which is the prison and schools catering category. You know, like insane amounts of food being served to children in schools and to prisoners. You know, I mean, it's massive. Where does all that food come from? You know, so we were just really interested in all sorts of stuff. You know, this is the land of opportunity to make a difference. Either in, you know, supply chains, like deep down, and where you know, how can you get nutrition into the diets of these people who have got zero nutrition, suffering from all sorts of horrific problems, and also not only that, the food they're eating, they're encouraging the growth of and production of food that is properly killing the planet. So, you know, that's one end. And then the other end, you've obviously got the sort of, you know, the more premium end of the market. And there's a whole bunch of businesses out there. So we went out there And we said, my God, okay, so there's two opportunities here. One is to help take the learnings from Europe, which is way ahead of the game, and from the Baltics, etc., and bring those technologies, bring those learnings to America fast, and really start to radically shake up America in terms of ESG and their approach to food out there. There are shows like there's one called the Anaheim Show, which is every year. I think it's called the Natural Food Show, and we've been out there for a number of years. And you go out there, and it's just enormous. And there are food brands. A few of ours launched out there. With just tens of thousands of people crawling over this enormous show next to and you see all of the new trends coming out there, and people sort of hustling for position to get either sort of into distribution with, the big strategic guys out there, or they're all fighting for distribution or some sort of deal. And you'll get the big players all the way down to the small players. And one year you'll go out there and it'll all be kind of newfangled CBD infused things, and then this year it was all plant-based, and what made me laugh in California is we were renting a place in Newport Beach, and we came back from a sort of 3 days of intense plant-based sort of everything, and you couldn't recycle your rubbish. They didn't offer recycling facilities, and it's like but anyway, the reason I mentioned it, so I got distracted, was that there's a huge opportunity out there. B, I think there's so many things that we can explore.
Sorry to interrupt, because I've got something about was the client that sent you out there James Averdeek? Was that
no?
No. Sorry.
Before that. No. This was in fact it was Ritter Sport sent us out there. The German chocolate business, and they sent us out there to help them talk about how they could get into America, and we worked with them on a sort of strategy project, and they were great actually, and they were like, how do we land and they had a big, because they're doing a big piece on their own chocolate production, so they've got their own plantations, and they're going for a sort of a really big push on it. They're a €500 million business, sort of looking at their own supply chains and doing lots of interesting stuff. Anyway, long story short, they were one of the companies. We're also working with some Italians and other people out there. And then Jim Averdeek came to me and said, the Coconut Collaborative that we launched, which you're part of, is not doing well out in America at all. In fact, it's failing fast. And
why? Because I don't understand that. Because I was doing a bit of research, and because we'll explore it in a sec. But you've obviously created this new brand called Bondeville.
Yeah, Bondeville.
And I was, I was just completely bamboozled and flabbergasted that Coconut Collaborative wouldn't land in America. In my eyes, Newport Beach, the Californians would literally be chowing down on that stuff all day, every day. But why wasn't it working?
Well, good question, and I'm not entirely sure I know the answer to that, because we that ship had sailed. I think a combination of unfortunate operational changes, perhaps some people issues, that sort of stuff. So nothing you could put your finger on, but it was doing okay. And then I think they made a few key decisions that ended up with bad decisions were made, and people left the business, etc. So he was in a situation where he had to sort of decide, we need to reboot. And I asked him the question, so what would you do differently if you started again today? And they'd done a sort of strategic overview and said, I think we've kind of missed the boat on that natural yogurt play. There are other categories that are winning faster than we are. It's at a different life stage to the UK and Europe, where they were really killing it. And actually said, well, we could chase that opportunity, but it's going to be a lot of hard yards because we've kind of done our 5 years. So they did an amazing thing, which was they said, okay, let's really rethink like a startup. And so we said, well, what about the big opportunity is to clean up the desserts category out in America. It's massively underserved. It's in a terrible state. as we all know, and there's a big opportunity there. And in fact, the opportunity is very sizable to produce a kind of plant-based, a coconut goo, effectively. And so it was actually this time last year that he rang me up and said, I kind of think we need to rethink this. And I said, okay, fine, great, let me know. And then there was a bit of stakeholder jostling for position, because I think the investors and the American teams, who we'd never met at the time, had sort of said, well, we don't want a UK company doing our creative work over here. We want to use a local agency and blah, blah, blah. And Jim had said, look, no, I don't want that, which is very sweet of him. And but I think he was being polite, because he's a good man and he's very collaborative. Hence the name Coconut Collaborative. It wouldn't be very collaborative if we didn't do that. Anyway, so there was some work done, and then back to the back end of the year, he sort of said to me, or back end of the summer, he said to me, look, it's not right. This work's not right. They've taken the existing band, they've tried to sort of evolve it. What do you think? And I said, well, I think you need to really reboot. Why don't you just there's nothing left. Just kill and start again. Just think like a startup. It wasn't particularly big, the business out there at that point. But I did the same trick that I did to him 18 years ago, or whatever. I can't even remember how long ago Goo was. And I got his twin brother, who had worked and done a very good job of launching it at an early stage in America, Ed. He got it going quite well, actually. But he then left the business.
Collaborative. He
did a good job of getting that early stage growth.
Right, cool.
Then they brought in a chap who I think had a different view of the strategy, and for whatever reason decided to change it. And I think unfortunately that strategy didn't work, and it caused some sort of pretty irreparable reversals in their success. So that was why they did a brilliant thing of saying, right, okay, let's fix it, and that's why we got to the table. So anyway, I could tell that there was a reluctance from the American friends that this was not going to be well received. That whatever we did, I think, was going to be slightly tarnished by our being brought to the table forcibly by the founders. So I decided to do a classic Big Fish, which is we completely mocked. We did the whole thing. We created a website, we created the pack, we did the whole shebang. And we basically made it look. We set up an Instagram account. We did everything. And I got Ed, Jim's twin brother, not to tell him, to leak the URL about 2 hours, an hour or so before the presentation. Because I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this again. So I leaked the URL, and of course these days it was fantastic, because when I did it last time, there wasn't even, I don't think we even had the internet. And I got this WhatsApp. He WhatsApped Jim. And Jim then sent this WhatsApp to the investors in America. I mean, within 15 seconds, the presentation was just everywhere. But what I'd done is I'd put Nestle's address at the bottom, and I'd actually put it linked back to the Nestle website. And so it was a Nestle brand. So they immediately thought, that Nestle had launched this perfect desserts brand, which was in fact the exact challenger brand to what they were trying to do or wanted to do. But it was very, very distinctive and very brave, called Bondeville, and the line was "to hell with guilt," and it was all about sort of standing against all these people who kind of say naughty but nice. What the fuck? You should never feel guilty. Food and guilt is a dangerous concept, particularly in this age of Instagram and all sorts of sort of orthorexia and things like that. And so we'd really gone hard on this idea. Of being a challenger brand and producing something which is completely innocent, but making it look really bad for you, and sort of, actually kind of using the language rather like, I suppose, a bit like Liquid Death. And anyway, they zip round, and now before the presentation, I got this WhatsApp back going, Jesus Christ, Perry, have you seen this? We're doomed. We're out. And then all the investors gone, oh fuck, we're doomed. This is a disaster. This is amazing. And they were literally going, it's amazing. This is, oh my God. And in fact, so I then got on the Zoom with Jim and his American marketing manager, this lovely lady, and she, Jamie, she was called, is called, and we got on the call and they were like, "Oh my God, this is us." And I said, "No, I know, Jim. I don't think I'm even going to bother showing you the work. Because I mean, what's the point? And we're knackered, aren't we?" And what did you think? I mean, he said, "This is incredible. I can't believe it. I mean, it's just, I'm my head in my hands, isn't it?" Anyway, I let him go for a couple of minutes, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to put you out of your misery now. I'm afraid I've done it again." And he was like, "What?" Anyway, it was all very funny. And the best bit was Jamie, his marketing manager, said, "Oh my God, Jim, I'm going to be honest. I rang up my husband and said, I'm going to go and work for this company." I think it's great. So the good news is you do. So, it's amazing, isn't it? And I think taking people outside, again, to that surfing beach, so they're not in the office, they're not behaving like someone with a clipboard marking some homework. They're seeing it from a different angle. They're seeing it from a different perspective. It's an out-of-body experience. You're not evaluating it as the brand manager who's commissioned that work or the marketing director. You're evaluating it as a consumer or a competitor, envious, wishing you'd had that, coveting it, and going, and you're liberated for that few moments, the few moments that you are blissfully ignorant that it's your work. You are liberated, and it's kind of like going, I don't have to be the judge. And as soon as someone says it's now your responsibility to put that into the market, you change your behavior and you immediately start to think differently. And actually, in their defense, they didn't change a thing. It was incredible. They were amazing. And it literally launched almost, I mean, I think we probably tweaked it with a word or two, but it was pretty much exactly as we did it. It's amazing. And it's still, who says it won't fail? It might do, but it's on that discovery and validation fast trajectory. And at the show, at that Anaheim show I told you, it won awards, best new product. People loved it. It was great. So I just think that bravery of thinking big, diving deep, swimming fast comes back to, in everything you do. That was about thinking big from our point of view. I was saying to the team, we're not going to go in there with a limp bit of, I've got 3. You want this one or that? If you don't like my values, I've got some others down here. Don't do that. Commit.
It's Perry. It's absolute genius, and there's so much in that. Obviously, what we were talking about earlier about like what is your why? What problem are you solving, and what we're going to say no to? And obviously, Jim Avadi did that. He was like, right, I'm going to say no to the Coconut Collaborative, which is brave, especially when it's smashing it in the UK. It's looking at, okay, what problem are we going to solve? Because the problem we're going to solve in the UK is very different to the problem we're going to solve in America, which is obviously these puddings that are, probably laced with crap. And then the why, the why is slightly is different. I think there's just so much in that for listeners.
But also guilt. That was about the why. Is indulgence. The indulgence. It shouldn't be about gluttony and fatness and putting on weight and a moment on the lips is a lifetime on the hips. All that awful thing. I've got 3 daughters, and I kind of talked to them about this. I said, is this really controversial? What do you think about this? And there was a really good moment where they all were like, no, that's brilliant. And then everyone started overthinking it. And they all got a bit worried about, oh gosh, I said, but the point is, your first reaction was great, wasn't it? It liberated you. It liberated you from that bollocks. And we had the guys in America, it smashed it. The women over there were brilliant. The blokes were, us blokes were rubbish, but they were great. They were like, yeah, hell yeah, this is fucking brilliant, guys. Let's do it. And that I think is absolutely marvelous, that if food entrepreneurs like Jim, and there are many others, are brave and they are prepared to say, do you know what, let's get stuck behind it. And again, with the Coconut Collaborative, we're having another big push on that because it's grown and it's very, very successful. And it's, Jim's doing a great job of sort of, only yesterday going, let's just re-examine our supply chain again. Let's make sure that we're just really keeping, let's actually go harder. And it's great. He's absolutely right. He's relentlessly pursuing better on behalf of the original reason for doing it, which was to clean up the acts of, and look, hey, everything's on a spectrum, isn't it? we're probably the least sustainable business in a world where there are other far more things. And frankly, we all strive to do our best we can. So I think the relentless pursuit of better for food brands will only be driven by insurgent entrepreneurs, restless nutters like you and others who, have got very strong opinions and are prepared to take risks and, go into the lands of the unknown and challenge how things have been done. And conventional wisdom needs people like that to give it a good old run for its money. So yeah, I mean, exciting, happy days. And I think my job and the Big Fish team's job and the if you don't ask team's job is to constantly provoke and be a corporate pain in the arse to sort of, keep let's just scratch a bit deeper. And have you thought about that? And that's what innovation is. That's the mutated gene. That's the replicator of you keep doing the same thing, nothing will change. If you change things, change will come. And in fact, you've reminded me, actually, I've completely forgotten to ring a friend of mine, Ian, in New York, who's an amazing strategist, and I haven't spoken to him for years. But, he used to work for Apple and all the big companies, and I never thought I'd ever work with him, but I've actually got in touch with him. I said, look, really need to talk to you now, because you do big stuff with billions and billions and billions of dollars businesses, and I don't do well in front of those boards, and that's who we're connecting with. We're connecting with some amazing people. So I think, sorry, I've been bollocksing on.
No, it's brilliant. Because as I said, one of the best storytellers I've ever met. So my job is to sort of just sit here, absorb, and then sort of extract and extrapolate the bits that are, palpable and delicious for listeners. But no, I think I'm gonna have to run because I've got to.
Yeah, so I didn't realise it. Actually, I've been talking bollocks for about an hour or whatever, or 2 hours.
Yeah. But no, Perry, that was brilliant. I think that the crux of this for listeners, and you kind of wrapped it up nicely there. It's this asking why. Obviously, the Simon Sinek thing is brilliant, but asking what your authentic why is. Doing things differently. This pursuit of always better. This thirst for knowledge and kind of just not following logic, because logic will just lead you back to the same place. I think Jamie Lang from Candy Kittens taught me that the other day.
I know Jamie.
Yeah. I mean, you and I could probably wax lyrical. Well, we can wax lyrical for hours, but they were actually telling our listeners about the Katie Clapham thing you came up with.
Did he mention? I didn't listen to that. Oh, right. Has he mentioned that?
No. So the episode goes. Their episode hasn't gone live yet, but yeah, I think we should probably have our own podcast on the side, Perry, because we could talk for ages. But yeah, no, I absolutely love that as always. Real pleasure to have you on. And
thank you.
Yeah, there's just so much in that for listeners to kind of get their mitts or earlobes on.
I'll probably get into all sorts of trouble. But anyway, look, thank you very much. Send me the bill for the therapy. It's been like being on the couch.
I'm just going to hit pause.